open. All right, let's bring KC Joyner into the Boardwalk on the hotline. I guess everybody is talking about the last play of the game where Claypool scores the touchdown. He's matched up with Nathan Geary. Doug doesn't want to seem to give an answer. When you watch that play, who is at fault for the Eagles' defense? Geary, McLeod, somebody else, Schwartz? What did you make of that final touchdown where Claypool is wide open?
I read where Claypool said that it usually would be an Ebron play, and Ebron wasn't in there. And Ebron had a really hit-or-miss game, so he's in there for Ebron, and that Roethlisberger had to tell him what to do on the play, so the Eagles actually should have known what was coming because Roethlisberger had to literally yell to him, "This is what I want you to do." But if you're the Eagles and you see a situation where you've got a linebacker covering Claypool after the way he played, I think you need to call timeout at that point. So I'm blaming the Eagles on that one because that's just a matchup. It doesn't matter if the linebacker plays at his upper level. Claypool is such an elite athlete; he's going to win that one 9 times out of 10.
Right. So you see that Geary is matched up with Claypool. At that point, the best course of action is calling timeout. Either
calling timeout or rotating the safety down and making sure, because they had a safety over the top. They had it capped, but the safety wasn't getting to get up there fast enough. There's too much space between Geary and the safety, so the safety would have to come up faster. I mean, you have to do something, but you just cannot allow that matchup to go, given though, especially the way Claypool had played. It is just a physical mismatch. Claypool at Notre Dame, he was a phenom. They couldn't figure out even what to do with him necessarily. They said they could have played him at linebacker. They could have played him at safety. They could have played him at wide receiver. He's that good. He's that talented, and you just can't leave that sort of matchup out there.
You look at the Eagles up front. They were not able to really get to Ben Roethlisberger. Were you, I don't want to say disappointed, but was it disappointing the way that front four for the Eagles? We know that's what Jim Schwartz wants to do. He wants to get pressure. They really couldn't get to Roethlisberger.
They couldn't get to Roethlisberger, and the Steelers, remember, they've had some offensive line issues, too. They've had a lot of changes up front, and they lost to Castro during part of the game, too, so that's an issue, but you should be able to get more than one sack for 8 yards. Although the Steelers they're doing a lot of things. They're not being as aggressive. Like, this is not the 2018 Steelers. This is not, in fact, the Eagles, I think, had more deep passes. If I remember correctly, they had one more deep pass than the Steelers did all game. And it was a pretty close game the whole time through, so it wasn't like it was, a situation where the Eagles were just having to throw the ball a ton more. But I don't think the Steelers were throwing the ball deep quite as often. But, yeah, you would expect to get more than they did. They did some creative things on defense against the run, but against the pass, I think they need to find a way that if they're not getting a rush of 4, you got to bring them 5. You got to bring 5, then you got to bring 6. Whatever you got to do, because you can't have one sack in the game and only 2 quarterback hits the whole contest. You got to do better than that.
Yeah, I thought the Eagles line really did not have one of their better games this year. Let's flip over to offense. Carson Wentz, 20 of 35, 57%, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns. The one pick was like a punt. And then the other one was questionable, whether Ertz got knocked off his route or what happened there. He was sacked 5 times. What did you think overall of Carson Wentz's game?
I like Carson Wentz's game, and the fact that 2 of the sacks came in the last 5 minutes of the game when it's a different kind of game situation than it was earlier on. So I think overall they blocked very well because the Steelers were trying to get after them, and the Steelers, as we talked on Friday, they've got the highest blitz rate in the league, the highest pass pressure rate, and the Eagles overall held up fairly well to be able to fire 9 vertical passes like they did, 9 T passes and complete 3 of them to Fulgham is a pretty good achievement. In fact, they were 5 of 9 if you count the pass interference penalty that they got to Hayden in the third quarter. So that's very good on vertical passes against that Steelers team. In fact, we said on Friday, too, that if you can get decent enough pass block, and the Steelers will give you opportunities downfield in the passing game, and the Eagles were able to take advantage of that. So all in all, I was pretty happy with how they looked there.
Travis Fulgham, 10 catches, 152 yards, and a touchdown. He had 13 targets. Have the Eagles kind of backed themselves into finding something? Why is Fulgham having success?
It happens a lot in the NFL where you'll see a receiver come in and you'll see a receiver play well for a short period of time. It's happened a number of times. They're just finding ways to be able to get him open. They're asking him to do fairly simple things, And the Steelers, frankly, their corners are hit-or-miss corners. But last week he beat Dante Johnson of the 49ers, who's a backup corner, and the Steelers have guys who will give up big plays if you allow them to. So I think that's part of it. It's a combination of factors, but I think as he's being asked to do more, I think it's probably going to be a little more difficult for Fulgham. But if they can keep a limited role and say, this is what you're going to do, you're just going to be our big play guy, we're going to get you in favorable matchups, I think we're going to continue to see more of the same.
Right. I mean, because you have Jeffrey assumingly coming back. You've got Jackson coming back. You're going to have Rieger back. I want to ask you about Zach Ertz. 1 catch, 6 yards. He had 6 targets, and he only caught 1 pass. He has really struggled this year. Is that because Goddard is out, the 12 personnel? I mean, what do you see with Goddard in this offense, that he was one of the premier guys in the league, and this year he's really struggling?
They're not obviously they can't put Rodgers in there. Rodgers can't block as well as Goddard, and he's not as good of a pass catcher either. So I think that takes a limitation there, that you're going to put Ertz in there. You're going to have Ertz do things that he might not normally do because, again, I don't think Rodgers is that good of a blocker. So if you want better blocking, you might have to keep Ertz out there. You can't go quite to 12 quite as often. You can't get the matchups. Plus, the Steelers have some very good linebackers, too. And if you're the Eagles, you're not going to want to throw against Ertz in the linebacking core because their linebacking core are probably, if you measured the matchup comparative to what the favorable matchup was in the secondary versus, say, Nelson or versus, say, Hayden, who had a very hit-or-miss game yesterday, I'm looking at saying I'd rather go to the outside than try to go to Ertz because, frankly, the Steelers linebackers are just better matchups.
How much you just mentioned that the Steelers have good linebackers. How much is the Eagles' ineptitude at that position causing their defense to struggle as much? I mean, it just seems that everybody goes after Geary.
They do, and honestly, it's a very big part of their game. They're able to do things in the running game, but as we mentioned a couple weeks ago when they were playing the Rams, I saw them playing a lot more two-gap where they were trying to protect their linebackers. And yesterday, they had to play. They were many times a lot higher percentage than I would have thought. In fact, on almost every play, they were putting an extra guy in the box. They wanted to stop the run, and it says, okay, well, if you've got to put the extra guy in the box, there's a lot of schematic reasons that you do that. But if you've got dominant linebackers, you probably don't have to put that extra guy in the box. I think that they think we have to cover all the gaps in the ground game because we just don't expect our linebackers to win. So it's one of those situations where it's not just affecting the passing game, but it's affecting how they're going to attack the ground game too.
It's like when you were growing up, as a kid, you wanted to play running back and linebacker. And now it seems that those two positions are the least valued position in the NFL.
Honestly, the people in the NFL, you take an Al Davis. Al Davis always knew that linebacker was a position that you needed talented players, but there was probably more depth there than people thought. And NFL people, the smart NFL people, will know that the running game has always been about getting good blocking. If you get good blocking, you get a running game. And honestly, the Eagles found that out yesterday because they had the one big play of Sanders, and then they didn't do anything else in the ground game whatsoever. And by the way, Steelers also were loading the box a lot too, much more than I thought. So I think the Steelers were saying we're not going to let Sanders beat us. So that's probably another reason why they went out to the vertical.
Yeah, well,
game.
I thought in the two defensive lines we talked about, they had 15 sacks. The Eagles had 17. I thought the Steelers defensive line dominated the game.
I thought they did a lot better. Again, the run they absolutely did. In the passing game, again, I think that the Eagles got a lot of deep passes away, which is more than what the Steelers would have wanted because the Steelers were hoping to blitz you and not let you get those deep passes away. So that was a big part of it. But against the ground game, again, the Steelers, it was amazing to me that it was as much as they could dominate up front that they still said we're going to put in the extra player in the box because you just normally wouldn't do that. But if you take away that one big run by Sanders, which was where they caught the Steelers in the schematic issue, they caught them on a blitz and a stunt, and they got about 3 people out of position, and they missed a tackle, and then it was off to the races. You take that out, they did nothing in the ground game. So, I mean, the Eagles got to do better on the ground game than what they did yesterday.
NFL Insider KC Joyner, thefootballscientist.com. He joins us now. It's one thought on every game and a look at tonight's Monday Night Football, and we'll get his thoughts on obviously the Tuesday Night Football game as well. All right, one thought every game. Here we go. Ooh, boy, Panthers 23, Falcons 16. Everybody got fired. They lose the GM. They got the special teams coach fired. Dan Quinn is out. And the Panthers get to 3-2, 0-5 for Atlanta.
It says something for the Panthers that you can do that well without Christian McCaffrey. Imagine what they'll be like when McCaffrey comes back. Now they get a 1-2 punch back there, and Robbie Anderson is playing fantastic, so the receiving core is a lot deeper. But Atlanta, I think Atlanta still, everybody's been saying it, and I think it's true. They still had a hangover from the Super Bowl loss, and they never got over it. And if that's the case, you got to go in a different direction.
Yeah, Quinn was probably there a year or two. Too long. All right, biggest upset of the day. The Raiders go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. They put up a 40-burger against them there. Raiders get to 3-2, first loss of the year for the Chiefs.
The first loss of the year for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs, we talked last week that they don't want to get into shootout games. They hate them. They want to stay away from them. I think the Raiders, they said, we're going to get you into a shootout contest. We're going to be very aggressive. We're going to try and get a lot of points on the board. And it says that maybe the Chiefs aren't quite as, in fact, we know they're not quite as good in those contests as they are on other types of contests. So the Chiefs cannot allow that sort of thing to happen. But kudos to the Raiders for saying, hey, we're going to get into a situation where we can win.
All right, over in New York, New Jersey, the Jets fall to 0-5. It's two 0-5 teams now. There's a third one coming up in just a minute. The Cardinals beat them 30-10. Big day for the Cardinals, 380 yards for Kyler Murray. And they finally won a game where they were the favorite. They had lost that game to Detroit. They lost the last week, and they finally get this one against the Jets. Jets are terrible.
Jets are abysmal. They're atrocious. Flacco is a step down. Even with Bell back in the lineup, it doesn't matter. That's the worst offensive league. Their coach is talking about, Gase is talking about saying he might want to give up play calling ability and play calling to somebody else. And I think you better do something because as bad as that offense is, it doesn't matter if the defense even starts to play better and the defense isn't so bad. That's probably the worst team in the league. And again, kudos to Arizona for beating a team you're supposed to beat finally.
Rams, same score, 30-10. Washington falls to 1-4. Great story with Alex Smith coming back there. Goff goes over 300 yards, and obviously the Rams get to 4-1. They're feasting, though, on the NFC East. So what do we know about the Rams?
The Rams, again, they're beating competitions that they should beat. They still can't seem to figure out what they want to do with their ground game between Henderson, Brown, and Akers. They keep rotating them in and out, and they're not getting into a groove with any of them. But when you got that much talent in the backfield, it speaks well for what their ability could be in the future, and they've got a deep receiving course. I think the Rams are actually going to play better than they are right now down the road. But Washington, they're not the worst team in the league because they got that first week win, but they are pretty darn close, and they've just got all kinds of problems. They just don't have talent. It's just that simple. They're just not that talented of a team, and they're playing to their talent level, and their talent level is maybe a 3-win club.
Ravens, they win big, 27-3. Joe Burrow had a tough day at the office, 19 of 30, 183. And the Ravens defense just dominates the game. Ravens 4-1. They're in Philly this week. Bengals fall to 1-3-1.
It shows well for the Ravens that their defense stepped back up after that Kansas City performance, and it shows that Burrow can go from leading his team to 500 offensive yards from 1 week to the kind of game he had yesterday. And the Bengals just have a long way to go, but it shows Baltimore can play defense better than they had, and that's good for them because after what happened to Kansas City was, hey, is their defense taking a step back? The answer is no.
All right, let's go to a lot of teams scored 30 right on the nose. The Texans were another one of them. They win 30-14. Jacksonville, after their opening week win, they've lost 4 straight now. They're 1-4. Texans are 1-4. Deshaun Watson, 359 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and the Texans' rush defense did a whole lot better than they had. They were the worst in the league in many categories, and they stepped up big time yesterday, held Robinson in check. And between the Jaguars' problems and the kicking game and a couple other things, they're not playing anywhere near as well. But Houston, it shows Bill O'Brien was the problem because now they change coach and they start playing to their talent level. And if they keep doing that, I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs, but another 6-7 wins, I could see it.
All right, let's go to a surprise, maybe the biggest surprise of the weekend. Dolphins travel across the country. They only win 43-17. Fitzpatrick, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns in the game. Dolphins get to 2-3. 49ers drop to 2-3. What is wrong with San Francisco?
The big thing for San Francisco yesterday was their secondary was incredibly banged up. They were missing 3 starters in their secondary. They had another player who was banged up in their secondary. I mean, their secondary is in terrible shape. And the Eagles, they couldn't really go for that, and they didn't say, hey, we're going to go attack that. But you remember they hit the big play to Johnson. Well, the Dolphins, they've got Fitzpatrick back there, and he just went Fitzmagic and said, I'm going to go aggressive and attack the secondary and go after them. If they make mistakes, that's fine. And that's something that made they gave a path to victory against the 49ers. So a lot of teams are going to be able to take it. The 49ers secondary doesn't get healthy again.
Yeah, big performance there by the Dolphins. All right, let's go to Cleveland. 32-23. They beat the Colts. We were wondering the Colts had the best defense. Browns were scoring points. Well, the Browns kept scoring. Colts couldn't stop them. Browns 4-1. Colts fall to 3-2. Baker Mayfield 2 touchdowns in the game.
Baker Mayfield looked very good. Phillip Rivers looked terrible. He had that one, I don't know what he was thinking on the interception. He's throwing a very late pass out in the flat, and it's just an easy pick six. And that pass in the end zone, I can get that one a little more. I mean, he had pressure in his face, and he had to do something, either take a sack and take a safety or hope that you can get a call, and he didn't get the call. But the big thing there is Cleveland. Been breaking down a lot of run blocking tape this year. They're easily the best run blocking team in the league. They don't just dominate the line of scrimmage. They dominate the tackle box entirely. They block at the second level better than anybody, better than teams I've seen probably since that Dallas dominant offensive line a couple years back. So they are that good, and they're not a question mark. It's going to be a great game next week between them and Pittsburgh.
All right, speaking of Dallas, 37-34. Giants fall to 0-5. Still bad Cowboys defense. They lose Dak along the way. Dalton comes in. Man, this is going to be an ugly division.
It is going to be an ugly division, and I'm curious what Dallas is going to do, because if they had their dominant offensive line like they did in past years, you could say, fine, you're missing Dak. You've got a decent backup in Dalton. You can go ahead and play a ground-based game, but their defense won't let them do that, and their offensive line won't let them do that. So we're going to see what Andy Dalton can do if he's got 3 quality wide receivers. He did a solid job in Cincinnati for a time, but we're going to see if he can do it in Dallas, and if he can, they still get a shot, and it shows well for Dallas that people gave them grief for going out and getting Dalton and wondering what their reasoning was behind that. Well, now they've got a solid backup to be able to make a run.
I mean, your defense is that bad that you gave up 34 to the Giants, who weren't scoring, 12 points a game. That defense is real bad. Sunday night, great one. Seahawks get to 5-0. Vikings fall to 1-4, 27-26. A game-winning drive by Russell Wilson. DK Metcalf, 6 for 93. Big game there as the Seahawks. They got problems, but 5-0 still feels good.
5-0 feels good, and Metcalf's having a phenomenal year. Minnesota, they've lost 2 games by 1 point this year. They'll be better than they down the stretch. They've got 11 games left to turn things around. I think they'll come back into some sort of contention. But Seattle, they keep winning these games, giving up a ton of yards to the Dolphins, giving up points to the Vikings. They're winning these games like this, and that sounds great. But if you look at NFL history, teams that win fluky games like this, it tends to catch up to them down the road. So they need to make changes to get better, because if they get complacent at 5-0, they'll be 5-2 pretty soon.
All right, that is the Sunday slates. One thought on every game. Tonight, we got Monday Night Football right here on 97.3 ESPN. We were supposed to have a doubleheader. Now we're just having one. It's the Chargers and the Saints, and obviously, Saints have kind of been up and down, and the Chargers, Justin Herbert's been fun to watch.
He has been fun to watch, been throwing the ball a ton. He ought to do it a lot today, too, because the matchup would indicate that he should throw the ball quite often. The Saints have a couple injuries in their secondary. I'm curious to see what the Saints are going to do. They obviously can't go to the passing game because Michael Thomas isn't playing tonight, so they're going to have to go to Kamara and Murray, and they've used them both. By the way, Murray's getting like double-digit carries in most of his games, so this truly is almost a platoon backfield, and they can go to that, and I think they'll grind out a victory in that way, because Herbert's probably going to make a couple mistakes against that secondary.
All right, and then tomorrow we got another game for you right here on 97.3 ESPN. A Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. It's the Bills and the Titans. This is going 4-0, 3-0, 2 teams that are, very interesting. They're kind of similar but different. They run the ball. They're defensive-oriented, but the Bills have some big play guys that the Titans do not have.
Yeah, the Bills are using interesting schemes where they go into either the 4 wide receiver sets or they're going to 3 wide receiver sets with 1 tight end in the backfield. So they're spreading the defense out and then being able to still go power up the gut. It's an interesting combination that could probably get Tennessee fits. But I'm looking at that Bills secondary, and they're bringing Norman back, and I don't like Norman in coverage, and they're making a lot of mistakes in the secondary, a lot of big plays. So I think Tennessee has more path to victory by a very small margin than Buffalo, assuming everything's healthy. And if it's even that way, I probably like Tennessee by a slight margin there.
All right, that's tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. That's one thought on every game. And, of course, Casey's back on Friday to preview Week 6 in the NFL. There is no Thursday night football this week. It's a Tuesday night game, no Thursday night. The Week 6 schedule we will go over on Friday's show right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the free mobile app. Download the app and take us with you wherever you go. And KC Joyner will be back with us on Friday. Thanks, pal.
Appreciate it.